Hello, this is Keith Stone with the Center for Hellenic Studies, and I'm here again with Greg Nagy, Janet, Aylin, and Sarah for another office hours, HeroesX office hours. We are talking about hour 3 in particular, where we've had the most responses. And let me just quickly read the question there. In the first lament of Andromache, what she is saying, or really singing, as quoted in the telling of the story, what she is saying or singing fits the characteristics of lamentation, as the anthropologist would describe it. But what about the response of Hector to the words of Andromache? Can his words be understood as part of the lamentation? I can see many possible ways of thinking about Hector's words here. What do you think? We were just talking about a couple of interesting responses. Which one should we talk about first?
How about the one that Aylin mentioned? I think it was you, dear Iliad, about an echo.
Yes.
How Hector's words echo what Andromache says. And what I like about that metaphor is that when you read Ovid, who is such a master in assimilating all classical traditions, when Ovid talks about Echo as a personified girl, what makes life difficult for Echo is that she can never make the first move. And she can never tell somebody, I love you, because all she can do is echo what somebody else has already started. And what if the start isn't right? And so in a curious way, here the male voice couldn't be saying the things that the male voice is saying if a female voice hadn't shall we say, got the lament going. And even that lament, of course, is how shall I say it, proleptic. It's not a lament that is in reaction to Hector's already being dead, because he's not dead yet. So it's all, what's the word I just used, proleptic. That's maybe too fancy. Why don't we just say it's anticipatory? It anticipates the kind of lament that you would sing, and this is kind of a foreboding, as it were.
One thing that I can notice is that Hector really echoes the way that Andromache is concerned with her change in social status, you could say. He describes in painful detail what her life will be like after he dies. And that's something that she also talks about. And that's one of the characteristics of a lament.
And you really expect it from the woman, because that's such an integral part of a lament as sung by a woman is, look what you've done to me. You're supposed to be my protector because you're the man, I'm the woman. These are these roles that are more traditionally outlined in the ancient world and in traditional societies in general. And those are her lines. Can I put it that way, if I can say it in modern theatrical terms? So what is he doing repeating those lines, or maybe even elaborating on those lines? It just makes it even more painful, because you don't expect the man to be as aware of how he is the perfect subject for lament. And may I fast forward in those comments that I've been putting together on the Iliad and the Odyssey. The more I read Iliad 24, the more I see that as the perfect funeral with the perfect laments that go with a perfect funeral. It's something that our number one hero in the Iliad, Achilles, never achieves. Only Hector achieves it. And there are a lot of messy things that happen, of course, before that, like the suffering of atrocities inflicted on Hector's body. It's as if he were still alive. That's the kind of suffering we feel. And certainly, again, that's something that Andromache is already projecting. It's a wonderful thing about lament that it's not tied down to the time and place of the actual lament. It can connect with any aspect of a woman's life if it's a woman who is singing the lament, whether it's in the future or in the past or, of course, the present. It's amazing.
One of our participants has been picking up on the idea of this ascending scale of affection, and has been trying to think also in terms of Hector's scale of affection. He's saying, well, going back into battle, it's almost as if he's ranked Helen as more important, and he's more concerned for Kleos, but where does that sort of fit? Is that valid, or are we talking about Helen, or are we talking about the whole of Troy here?
Wow, that's such a good question. I don't know. It's clear what Andromache's ascending scale of affection would be, right? Because if we can just review that first, she says, well, my father was killed. My mother died of a broken heart. My brothers are all killed. So you, Hector, are the only one that's left for me. You're my everything. In that case, the ascending scale of affection is narrowed down to one person, at least in that moment. And you're right. You would expect, if Hector is such an echoing person, for Hector to say, you're my number one, and he doesn't say that. You're absolutely right. The flip side, however, is that if we reconstruct Andromache more deeply, maybe using not just what we know in the Iliad, but everything we know about her, she does have, can I put it this way, an Amazon-like background. And even her name, fighting of men, she who is connected with the fighting of men, and of, I think, can be objective as well as subjective, is an Amazon name. So why does she get an Amazon name? And we know more clearly from other pieces, bits and pieces of Greek tradition, that she actually knew the secrets of Troy, that is to say, the military secrets of Troy. What are the most vulnerable and the least vulnerable parts of the citadel? Things like that. She has a definitely fighting side as well, which is certainly not played up in the Iliad. So I don't know. Does that help? That in a way, the side of Andromache, which has to do with fighting wars, is really what Hector is talking about. So if you think of the name of Andromache, she is still the number one person for Hector himself, I would think. Or at least I'm ready to play with that idea. What do the rest of you think?
Well, this is certain that there's a subtle comment from Andromache giving some kind of military advice to Hector in staying inside the walls instead of going outside and being killed. So she's, you know, in a way, she's giving him a defensive military advice. Stay inside.
Which is a very good piece of advice. If Hector had taken that advice, he would have survived. And well, how to put it? Then the story would be very different. And he is, can I put it this way, just to be challenging, he is out of character when you think of the fact that even his name is a defensive name. Hector means the one who defends, the defender, the protector, therefore the defensive warrior. It's like the black pieces in chess as distinct from the white pieces. And the fact that Hector goes on the offensive is, of course, his fatal mistake in the Iliad. Let's put it that way. And you're right, that part of Andromache's warrior background is explicit even in the Iliad. So thank you for that.
One of the other people has mentioned that Hector almost has a choice here of going out and fighting and getting the Kleos, or staying behind and having a long and happy life, very much like Achilles' choice. So
Yes.
Nice observation.
Yes. And you know what we're talking about, where the question is who or what is at the top of somebody's ascending scale of affection, can apply similarly to Achilles when we think of the fact that you can either say, well, the person who is Patroclus is at the top of his ascending scale of affection. But what if we say instead that it's what Patroclus means, which gets us right back to Kleos. Patroclus means he who has the Kleos, the glory, by way of poetry, the glory of the ancestors. And we think of Cleopatra too, in that story within the big story, where Cleopatra is clearly at the top of the ascending scale of affection of Meleagros, of Meleager, as some people pronounce him. And there too, what really is most important to Meleagros? Is it the wife, who happens to be called Cleopatra, or is it what the wife's name means? And in an ancient world, there's not that clear a distinction between who somebody is and what somebody's name means. There's a lot of merger there.
One of the participants mentioned that Hector's reply continues the lament of Andromache. It kind of relays. So and puts Andromache's lament in context. Yes.
And that's such a good formulation. Earlier, we played with the metaphor of echo. And I like that metaphor because the personification of echo can never start anything. It can only continue. But what you now mention, which is relay, that's such an interesting added element. It gives an added element because when you have a relay, it's not just echoing what was started. It is actually giving extra meaning above and beyond, plus meaning to whatever has been said before. So to say that that Hector is relaying is saying even more than to say that he is echoing, I think.
So Greg, can I just ask very briefly, without being too much of a spoiler for 24, in Rhapsody 6, Hector has come to find Alexandros, but he encounters three women. He encounters his mother, he encounters Helen, and then he encounters Andromache, which is the lament and response we've been talking about. But all three of those women will come into play later on in terms of lament as well.
It's such a beautiful observation that the sequence of contact with these three very important women in Hector's life, who are all potential lamenters for Hector when he's dead, and who will be the lamenters when we finally get to Iliad 24, how the sequencing of his encounters with each one of these women is different here in 6. And I think that's probably because the relationships that he has with these three women are still subject to change, to modification, and even to reinterpretation as we go from Rhapsody 6 all the way to Rhapsody 24. And I'm not sure I can interpret in an appealing way why we have the sequence that we have in 6, it's certainly the case that somehow whatever Helen sings in lament for Hector, when we fast forward to 24, is related to Paris, aka Alexander, the younger brother of Hector, and how Hector, although he is scolding Alexander, aka Paris, in the first third of the Iliad, that's his regular stance, how this scolding somehow gets attenuated by the time you get to 24. So I think the sequencing of Helen may have to do with the exchanges that Hector is having with Paris, aka Alexander. I'm guessing. I think that would be the case. And then as for Hecuba, she's obviously so important. She must be so important in what we would try to reconstruct as Hector's ascending scale of affection. And here in 6, I can't really figure out where she stands, where she should be placed. But it's pretty clear by the time we get to 24 that where she's placed there is just about where she belongs, which is number 2. Andromache in 24 is the first to lament, then Hecuba, and then finally Helen. And something else that I'd like to emphasize, it's interesting that the laments in 24 have a progression. You start with a group of women who seem to be mostly family, who sing the antiphonal part of the lament. In other words, the response to the main singer. That's how the antiphonal part of the lament works out in 24. So you go from very intimate, near and dear ones, and then you go to just all the women of Troy for response, for antiphonal response to the song of Hecuba. But then, in the case of Helen, and this is my punchline, there it's not just women who are close or all the women, it's the entire population of Troy who sing the antiphonal response. So that shows you that even though in modern terms, Helen is a kind of a villain almost at the beginning of the Iliad, towards the end, whatever damage she has caused by way of being taken in by the Trojans is somehow part of the overall sorrow, the story of the sorrow, and the theme of lament. So I find it perfectly reasonable, poetically speaking, that Helen should be the one who has the last word, as it were, in the laments for Hector, the 3 laments for Hector. And as I say, the antiphonal interplay between soloist and group bears this out, since the soloist is responded to by the entire community only in the case of Helen's lament.
Thanks, Greg. I think I found that very helpful in thinking about some of the issues that our participants had raised about why fighting for Helen, or are you fighting for Troy, and that really helps to put it in context.
Yeah, so things are still messy in Iliad 6, just as things are still messy for Achilles in Iliad 9. I used to think he's already made up his mind about everything, but the older I get, the more I see a very confused Achilles in 9. He really sorts things out only at the very end in 24.
I've got one. I remember that someone was thinking about whether Hector is also singing. If Andromache is lamenting, can we say that Hector is singing in his lament?
Absolutely. The nice thing is that, in a sense, everybody who's ever quoted in the Iliad or Odyssey is really singing the way Homer is singing, because it's all framed by the song that the muse sings to the master narrator, who then sings it to us. So, oh yes, isn't it nice that they're all quote unquote speaking in dactylic hexameters? Well, to say that is to say that they're singing. It's this kind of modified singing that dactylic hexameter, which is the official rhythm of Homeric poetry, is all about. Oh yes, it's all song.
That's what I wanted to hear. Any others that we should talk about before we go? It's about time. Nope. Okay. Well, thanks for joining us. And we'll look forward to next time. We'll talk about hours 5 and perhaps 6.
It'll be great. Can hardly wait.
Bye-bye.
Bye.